Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us in this second panel of today. It's going to be really interesting. I will just introduce a little bit our esteemed guests as they come from different backgrounds and different countries. So it's a very diversified panel, this one. Welcome, Tania. Tania comes from checkout.com.
Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing? It's a pleasure to be here today.
Welcome, welcome. Damu Winston, an international best-selling author. Damu, welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Pleasure to have you. Taha Sajid from Saudi.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a great pleasure to be here.
Welcome, welcome. Fawaz from Think Smart from Bahrain. Welcome.
Yes, hi. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it. Looking forward to answer your questions.
Our pleasure. And Charbel from Lebanon. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Loredana. Pleasure
Charbel,
for being here.
our prayers and we hope Beirut comes back stronger than before. So I hope you and your family are all okay.
Thank you. We are all safe, and Beirut will get back well soon.
Great. That's all we want. So I would like to start this panel discussion by leaving you all the stage for a couple of minutes to introduce yourselves. What are you doing, or your company is doing in the space, and what are your fintech superpowers, let's say? So please, Tania, if you would start.
Sure thing. Thank you, Loredana. So I'm Tania Asimionesei, and I'm a senior front-end engineer at checkout.com, which is the payment partners for most of the global brands, including Samsung, TransferWise, Deliveroo, Careem, and Entertainer within the region. At checkout.com, we're building the banking that businesses deserve, and we also empower them to adapt, innovate, and tinker their way through connecting payments. And as a developer and as a woman in tech, as fintech grows and evolves, so does my industry and my job. So it's a pleasure to be here and discuss about how is COVID impacting and how's technology changing.
Great. Thank you. I hear great news from checkout.com, but you'll tell us a little bit more later. Damu, please, if you can just introduce yourself and tell us what you're doing in the space.
Sure. For those who don't know who I am, Damu Winston. I am an international best-selling author based in the region. My latest book is I Don't Trust You, but Blockchain and Bitcoin Will Help. I also teach every bank in the region. In the UAE is my client. I teach future of banking, blockchain applications, and a few other courses. And I also, I'm a serial entrepreneur and an investor. That's it.
Great. Thank you, Damu. Taha, your turn.
Yeah, my name is Taha Sajid. I'm originally from Pakistan, but based in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. I'm primarily associated with Huawei as their technical lead, so looking after the 5G developments and rollout across Saudi Arabia. I'm also associated with Lamar Global Tech, which the name you're just seeing over here. It's a Hyperledger member and a partner. So basically what I'm doing with Lamar is to help them aligning themselves or aligning their strategy towards national transformation drive across the kingdom. So I'm also a founder of Smart Mobile POS, which is fostering the e-payments drive inside Saudi Arabia. So I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Great. Fawaz, can you please tell us a little bit more what you're doing in the fintech space?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Loredana. My name is Fawaz. I'm based in Bahrain. I'm from Bahrain originally. And I'm basically head of IT for a semi-government entity currently. I joined Think Smart as a trainer and consultant for blockchain applications. And we help onboard customers in the private sector and public sector to start their blockchain applications. And I'm currently consulting on a blockchain project in Bahrain for tax or collecting VATs for the private sector. And I'm looking forward to answering your questions and a great session on the fintech space here.
Exciting, exciting. Charbel, please, if you could just introduce yourself, what you're doing in the space. I know you do a little bit of academia, so please shed a light on that.
Yes, thank you, Loredana and Pearson for your kind invitation. Indeed, I'm co-founder of Blockchain Leaders, a consultancy firm operating in MENA region and Canada. We're providing a lot of trainings in addition to our work in consulting. I work as advisor for multiple blockchain projects in healthcare, supply chain, education, and finance also. Besides, I'm an university lecturer since 2007, teaching computer networks, information security courses. In relation to fintech, Blockchain Leaders is currently involved in a new digital bank project covering the Middle East, multiple Arab countries. It's a huge investment between Arabic and European investors. Also, we are supporting two central banks in the region in their consulting committees in analyzing potential use of central bank digital currencies. That's
great. We'll talk a little bit about that towards the end of the panel. But right now, I would like to start with something a little bit more general, let's say. I would like to hear your thoughts on where do you see the fintech landscape right now in the Middle East? Which areas, because we know that fintech umbrella it's like really big, right? So which areas do you see mostly given importance to and booming, like open banking or payments or wealth tech or prop tech? Where do you see a special, let's say, booming of that special industry? And why do you see that? So if you could just give an insight, each one of you, on which industry do you see more booming, that would be great. Anyone can start.
I think I'll start. So especially in Saudi Arabia, things are really evolving, especially with their national transformation drives. And especially the payments and remittance, as we know, that is always been a keen contributor in the fintech ecosystem. But as we are having a good leadership, and some good fintech Saudi, let's say, is one of the good entrepreneur or hub which support the ecosystem. So they have developed a complete framework which is also exploring some different use cases in the fintech ecosystem. Let's say we have prop tech and wealth tech companies which are also coming up, and especially they are getting the good investment opportunities in the kingdom. So that's why they want to explore more, and they're focusing on looking some use cases except from payments and remittance.
Great. Is the government paying particular attention to these areas? So are they more investing towards these?
Yes, exactly. SAMA is actually playing a very vital role over here, because as you know that if you came across one of the news that SAMA is doing some blockchain use cases for payments and remittance. So that's very encouraging for all of us, especially the local entrepreneurs, and especially for the Saudi government. They are building their new city NEOM, which is all about digital transformation and using emerging technologies. So it's been very encouraging, and also the funding and the supports which the local players are getting is immense. So I highly encourage so if any one of you is looking for funding and entrepreneurship growth, so you can have to check out the movements over here. Great.
In Saudi, it's all the money. It's where the money is, right? This is what you're telling us.
Exactly.
That's really great. Tania, I would like to stop a little bit into the payments because I know that Checkout.com is doing a lot into that perspective, and I would like a little bit to hear from you. How have you guys helped with all of this COVID situation, and how Checkout.com is really helping the industry go forward?
Sure. I actually wanted to mention that, so thank you very much for bringing it up. So for us, I think banking and payments is, at our core, at our heart. And due to COVID, it kind of like came with a plus and a minus. So for example, in emerging markets where cash was king and where digital payments and online payments came very, very slowly, and organically they would transition mainly into digital payments over the years, kind of like we've seen that forced transition in the past months. So for us, like in the payment sector, we've seen a massive change, especially when it comes to delivery services, food industry, anything that's online, we've seen it boom. In the same time, we do have merchants that maybe they're in tourism industry or, you know, the industries that actually got quite affected. So when it comes to payments and banking, we've seen kind of like an up and down, depending on the industry and on the sector. Overall, I think, and like I mentioned, especially in emerging markets, I think payments is booming and the landscaping is changing quite rapidly. But, you know, at the end of the day, you have to make the best out of the situation that's presented and try to implement the best solution, innovate, and try to offer people an easier, secure, and safe solution for them to still order some food or do some shopping or support them in any way that we can.
Pay securely. Whatever they want to do, the goal is to pay securely.
Exactly.
That's a noble goal. To serve the masses is a noble goal. And I really like what you guys are doing. Thank you. Thank you for your insights.
Thank you.
Fawaz, if we can have your thoughts in the GCC region, but I also want to know a little bit about Bahrain. What's happening there? What areas of fintech are really booming in Bahrain?
Okay, so to start off with, a company called Benefit, they launched the KYC project on blockchain last year, late last year in December. And that just opened up the door to see the benefits of what blockchain can do in terms of reduced costs and advantages for the public. And then a company called Tarabat Gateway, which specializes in open API for banks. They have now launched and they are specializing in connecting all the different bank accounts from all the different retail banks within their platform to make it easier for fintech startups to be able to connect to the platform and be able to move funds or leverage customers' accounts from all the different retail banks in the country. So that, I think, is opening up a lot of opportunity for future fintech startups to be able to leverage that and to be able to make it easier for them to reach their target customers, their target demographics, if they are looking to reach in the fintech space.
Great, thank you. Damu, if we can have your thoughts on which areas do you think are mostly booming in the fintech industry?
Well, to be honest with you guys, I don't think a lot of people have really brought this up yet, which is decentralized finance, DeFi. So DeFi is one of the areas that can fundamentally disrupt the financial services industry as we know it. You know, I teach on a regular basis, a weekly basis here in the UAE. And what I will say is that one of the biggest things that all the banks are concerned about is this concept of decentralized finance and regulations around that. You know, one of the things that we do see, I think the lady said earlier, payments has significantly increased. You look at MSMBD, you know, we see of their business clients, 96% of their business clients are now using, you know, contactless payments or some form of digital payment. We see the same thing happening in Saudi Arabia. You know, so we definitely know, you know, payments is huge. Open banking is massive. You know, we have in the region Dappy.co. We have international players like Yodely or Plaid. They're doing some exceptional work at their multiple POC projects here in the regions. Here in the region, not just the UAE, but in Saudi and Bahrain, doing some really cool projects there, especially around creating that open API infrastructure. But definitely the thing that I think every bank is keeping an eye out for, more than central banks, more than central bank digital currencies, is this concept of around digital finance, or it's like decentralized finance.
That's really good that you brought the topic of decentralized finance into the picture. I hear a lot about it around in discussions, in groups, and everywhere, and it's really good. But in my opinion, at least, I think that in the GCC, the regulations are not keeping up with all of this fintech innovations, right? So they're not in the same path. But we can delve into this a little bit later.
I would love to talk about that.
It's an important topic.
It is. Regulations is the key. Yeah, I was just going to say, regulations is the key to really innovation. So the previous panel talked a lot about innovation. And when we talked about it from a government perspective, this is one of the things I wanted to chime in about, is that, without regulations, it's the wild, wild west, right? It's, crypto 2017, 2016, right? But you definitely need regulations, but it can also stifle innovation. But where we will see the greatest opportunity is that merger between government, regulatory organizations, and financial institutions partnering together. And I think we're seeing a lot of that happening, especially with this, with CBDCs, with our central bank digital currencies.
That's great. Thank you, Damu. Charbel, please. What do you think? Which areas will be most booming from the fintech space?
Well, I believe that fintech is the, let's say, financial vaccine for COVID-19. So we know that fintech emerged after the 2008 crisis. And I'm sure that the changing consumer needs during and post the pandemic, in addition to the rapid technological development, will give a massive push for fintech. Beside payment and remittances that they are booming before the pandemic and during the pandemic. If we can mention some numbers, just statistic regarding the MENA fintech, there's some estimates that the market will reach 2.5 billion by 2022, according to MENA research partners. So we have a lot to do in this area, and a lot of innovations to compete with the payment, remittances, insurtech, open banking, direct tech will have great potential in the region. So let's focus out of the box, out of payments and remittances, and find the way to implement new ideas regarding these fintech solutions.
That's really great. I hear all of you are in one opinion about, let's say, the payment side, the open banking, and those are very, very important. What do you guys think about PropTech, for example? Taking the tokenization as a concept, what do you think it will deliver in PropTech or in wealth tech, for example? How can we connect also other industries and with the technologies of fintech into delivering something even outside of payments or even outside of open banking?
Basically, I think there's the whole tokenization aspect of blockchain. I think is going to open up a lot of doors, especially in the real estate sector. So, for example, one big example, MR Properties made a press release in December last year, 2019, that they want to sell the Burj Khalifa observation deck as part of an asset for $1 billion, right? And finding $1 billion a buyer for $1 billion is going to be a very difficult task, especially with the current situation. So one option they can do is do a tokenized share ownership on that Burj Khalifa observation deck and issue it to the public as token share, as the cryptocurrency exchange. So that's one option. So I think definitely going to see a lot of options there. And especially now with the COVID-19 the whole pandemic having a lot of impact on the real estate sector, the hotel industry, apartments and so on. Now they're looking for new innovative ways to be able to leverage and improve their liquidity, because they're having a major challenge with liquidity across the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and even Bahrain. So now they're looking at what options can they consider to really improve their situation in terms of liquidity, and what technology options are there. So blockchain token share ownership is one big one that can be available. Damu, please.
No, I was literally going to talk about liquidity and how, one of the greatest challenges that we're seeing is that a lot of these larger organizations, the UAE in particular, 70% of the tourism industry says that they will be out of business in the next 6 months, right? So, that's a huge, a lot of discussions around how do they tokenize certain assets to create additional liquidity in the market right now. And so I think we're gonna see this year the emergence of the first, it might not be EMAR, may not be, but I think we'll see this year, I think it'll be approved for some form of tokenization around real estate with one of the 3 or 4 exchanges that have been approved just here in the UAE in the past 2 months now, past 1 month now, and that are really going to be focusing on the real estate industry. So,
that's really great. That's really great.
If I can just add to that, I think that while there are amazing points, and I think tokenization can be a savior post-COVID and because of COVID, again, we can circle back to what Damu said before. If we don't have those regulations stable in place, then that token doesn't have any value whatsoever, right? So I think there's still a lot of work regarding regulation and creating a proper environment. As far as I'm aware, Abu Dhabi Global Market is trying its best to get there, but it's still, I think, at the global level, it's still far from it. If we look, for example, at even like normal coin-based cryptocurrencies or tokenization, both of them, they don't really have that support to make that impact. So for example, Checkout.com is proud partner of the cryptocurrency from Facebook, Libra, but they couldn't release it in the US for the exact same reason. So I think while region and especially Abu Dhabi Global Market is creating that environment, I think we're still far off from actually seeing a real value off of it, unfortunately. But this is what I see out there.
Can I just
want to add?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure, please, Jamu.
No, I'm just going to say, exactly what she just said, spot on. I did hear, the reason I brought up about, the recent month, there's been, I think, an expedited push for, I think, 3 companies out of ADGM, Midchain, Dex, and one more that have been approved to be, to be a regulated crypto. I'm not going to say crypto exchange, digital asset exchange. But all 3 of those companies that are out there, none of them are ready to start issuing tokens or having their exchange, for it to be a fully functional exchange. And I'm happy to, if anyone wants to disagree with that, I'm happy for someone to, tell me I'm wrong, but I can guarantee that none of them are ready to go to market for at least another 3 to 6 months at a minimum. So in that regard, while I think regulations is trying to help help the industry evolve so that they can, increase liquidity, I just don't think they're ready. So I think we got at least another 6 months before they'll be even ready at a minimum.
So, what is lacking? What is lacking to make them ready, in your view?
Based on the conversations I've had, I would say what is lacking is they have not been able to, one, validate their solutions that they're using. All of them are using white label solutions. I'm sorry, I don't mean to put people's business out there, not my place, but from what I know, I think it should be public knowledge, they're using white label solutions. And so so that means they have something that has been somewhat tested in another market, and now they're trying to align their technology to the ADGM's requirements. And so what I understand the ADGM is trying to do is make sure that, if this is going to be one of the first places to launch something like this in this part of the world, it has to be controlled. It has to be monitored well. It has to not fail, because there'll be, representation that comes out of this, region. And so with that being said, I do think that, ADGM is working hard, extremely hard, to make sure that whatever comes out, it's going to be quality. And so they're putting these strict requirements on top of these companies to fully vet their solutions before they start accepting outside, investors' capital, right? So I think that's a good thing. I mean, that's a good thing for us that live here and that plan to use these market players.
Yeah, I just want to add from the Saudi perspective. See, we are also catching up with UAE and Bahrain. We are not, the same, having the same, knowledge about it. But I want to highlight CMA over here, like the Capital Market Authority, who is playing a great role in putting up a clarity, what sort of tokenized models that we can have, or who can be the investors, or what sort of regulation should be in place. And with CMA, Saudi Arabia Cybersecurity Authority is also catching up, in trying to make sure that once we are issuing the tokens, it should be secure, and there should be enough security or cybersecurity best practices that are being in shape also. Once anybody proposing such solutions. So we are actually in a phase of developing a complete ecosystem around it, and then educating through like the local body, Saudi Fintech or Fintech Saudi, and all of these spheres, actually educating the people about how to go about the business. So this is where I feel that Saudi Arabia is doing a great job, and will soon catch up, I think.
That's a really great point. Clarity is crucial in order to have proper guidelines on how to go about with all the fintech solutions and blockchain solutions, in order for them not to do mistakes. And as Damu said, it's good to vet the solutions, to have a sandbox like ADGM has, or like the authorities in Saudi might have, to protect consumers and to protect investors. So it's all to protect the consumers out there. Really great insights. Thank you so much for that. But without noticing, all of us, while speaking about fintech, we kind of shifted into blockchain. And that's actually my next question, because more than often, fintech is used very interchangeably with blockchain, but blockchain is just one of the technologies that is somehow helping fintech in its scope and role, right, as an industry. What do you think are some other technologies that could change the way how we see finance today? Each one of you maybe can mention the same or different technologies. Where do you see other technologies giving their best into helping fintech?
If I can start on this one.
Yes,
so as a software developer, technology is my passion, my trade, my everything. And while blockchain, yes, has been lately the buzzword and the focus that everyone tends to gravitate towards, we also see AI alongside with machine learning for a lot of risk analysis or fraud detection. We also know that we cannot host anything without proper cloud computing as well. If we look out there, big data right now, it's something that everyone's cherishing and treasuring with any price, and that gets gathered with the help of a lot of technologies behind it as well. So I think in terms of technologies in fintech, we are seeing more and more being dragged into it, opposite to what maybe like a decade ago was just C++ or Python, and that was it. So now I think we're seeing a lot of emerging and new technologies having that application into fintech industry.
That's really great. Yes, I totally agree.
Yeah, I just want to add over here something. Once we talk about fintech, we talk about AI, we talk about blockchain, open bank, all of these technologies. But what I really feel is that which technology will really change the landscape is the 5G. Because I've been closely working with the 5G developments across Saudi Arabia. So I know that once we're talking about technology, if you're talking about 5G, it is a complete ecosystem of all the technologies. So once, let's say that if you are having a 5G network, it will be having an AI, it will be having a blockchain, it will be having a cloud infrastructure. So imagine that once we are going towards that age, I strongly believe that 5G is one technology, if it's been implemented properly, and if we can cover all the security aspect and all the commercial aspect, then it will going to change the fintech industry completely.
Great. Thank you, Taha. Anyone else wants to add something?
Well, yes, Loredana, if may I jump. I think a combination of all these technologies will be good for fintech. So as Taha mentioned, 5G will be a great infrastructure for using blockchain, big data, or AI in fintech. So we can use big data for, let's say, customer spending habits, or even segmenting like customers to optimize marketing or fraud management and the risk assessment, all that. AI for chatbots and other AI solutions. But I believe also that DeFi and blockchain will have the most impact here. Because the main reason is that blockchain showed a successful experience with Bitcoin. So blockchain application like peer-to-peer payment, lending, decentralized stocks will be a great example in any fintech applications. And here I have to mention the case of Wirecard. You all heard about the Wirecard recently. So Wirecard, one of the most big fintech companies in Germany operating worldwide. So they had this fraud, $2.1 billion US. And EY, which was auditing Wirecard since 2007, they mentioned that they couldn't follow this fraud because it's very complex, simply because it's on a centralized platform. So having a decentralized or a DeFi platform for Wirecard, where EY and other stakeholders could be involved, I think we could surpass this major problem.
Yeah, the same point. I think I'd like to echo back Charbel's point exactly. So AI for fraud is a big area with a lot of potential. And especially like, for example, 2 months ago, Abroad Capital, which was one of the largest asset managers in Dubai years ago, and they also went under complete liquidation and mismanagement of funds and fraudulent activities. So, and also the auditor there was KPMG, also one of the top 5 accounting firms. So the question is, there's a big gap. Okay, you hire the best accounting firm, you pay them all these thousands of dollars, but then there's a big fraud that happens after that. I mean, how is the investors protected? What technology can they use to implement to prevent that from happening in the future? So AI in fraud detection, if implemented the right way, it can definitely reduce that risk and mitigate the risk of potential fraud activities such as Wirecard and others in the future.
Very true, very true. Damu, you'd like to add something?
I was just going to say that's a biased question you asked us. I think most of us on this call are like, advocates of blockchain. We're all, in the space. So we're obviously going to be like, blockchain, of course, blockchain. So, but is it, I don't want to mispronounce your name. Is it Tania? Tania. As she said rightfully, we definitely are seeing a lot of stuff, in the artificial intelligence space. And even before all of that, one of the things I try to talk to all clients about is you have to go through phases. And so phase 1 is you need to talk about cloud and digitization. So going from having paper products or, and then digitizing it and putting it into the cloud, because you don't want to manage your own storage, your own facilities. And then from there, maybe you want to use blockchain so that, we can have a single point of truth that everyone agrees on. And then AI, so we can do predictive analytics and forecasting and things like that. But then the evolution of all of that is really robotics. I think we're gonna start to see a lot more. I know everyone is probably familiar with Pepper the robot.
Oh yeah, I love it.
Yeah. So that's. So I think we're gonna start to see more of that. We're starting to see there's something called VTMs, virtual teller machines, which are in essence, you go to a branch or a bank now, and they're cutting back on human resources because of utilization purposes. But ultimately, we're starting to see that the transition from these VTMs, virtual teller machines, to robotics. So the virtual teller machines are just like you go to the ATM, and it's a person that shows up on the screen and they talk to you, right? So it's still that human element to it, but the robotics piece of it is really the evolution of it, where you're talking to a robot because it's cheaper to maintain. They don't get sleepy. They don't come into work late. They're always on time, et cetera, et cetera. So then the real question becomes, what are the jobs of the future? And that's what I hope your next question is.
That's a very good topic, but I'm afraid I will have to do that on the AI panel. Okay. We'll talk about workforce and a little bit on that. But you have a very good point stating where is the future of work, or the future of the workforce going, because with all of these technologies, somehow we are going towards the cognitive robotic process automation, not only the manual, the automation of things, but the cognitive one. So as you said, there's human touch. We're progressing towards that. Let's see where we will end up. My next question, though, it's actually focusing on the knowledge gap in the region. We spoke about all of this technologies and whatever fintech is happening right now into fintech. But do you think the GCC, in terms of the masses, are they all educated just as you, for example, or just as little, having the basics of what's happening in the region? If I go today in the middle of the road, I don't know, in Dubai, in Bahrain, in Riyadh, and I ask someone random, like, do you know what fintech is? Do you know what's happening in the region? Do you know what blockchain is? Would they know how to answer? Or with the basics, I'm not saying the programming side or the deep tech side. What do you think is this knowledge gap in the region, and what do we need to do towards it?
If I may take this.
Ladies first.
All right. Go ahead, Tania.
Yeah. Okay, sure thing. So I think as masses, I don't think anyone can, if we stop a random person on the street, I don't think they're going to be like, oh, what's the difference between, in a cryptocurrency, between a tokenization and a coin? Like, I don't think they have that depth of knowledge, but I think it's more of a knowledge of usability, to say like that. So in terms of, if someone goes and buys a coffee, they're going to pay with their Apple Watch. If they're going to buy some groceries, it's like their phone or, their contactless card. So I think they're educated in terms of like, oh, I can pay anything with the devices that I have, super easy, seamless. If I go online to buy something, it's one click away to check out, and, that kind of like seamless experience. But I don't think as masses, they're educated within like that concept of, AI blockchain. I mean, everyone most likely heard about the terms, but I don't think there's a better understanding of what they actually mean. However, I keep seeing a lot of events and a lot of articles that are starting to promote that. So I'm hoping in time, slowly but surely, everyone will get that at least like basic knowledge of what fintech is and what it represents and what it does. Great point, actually. Everyone is using Apple Pay, everyone is using their device, but they're not really understanding that using their devices, they're actually contributing to the IoT economy. They're not understanding that what they're doing, for example, it's actually fintech. It's fintech in its simplest way, right?
Yeah, I just want to add one point over here. These days we are seeing, there are usually conferences happening and a lot of freebie stuff over here. So anyone who wants, have a good learning, they can educate themselves. Okay, but the problem that I'm finding these days is, people are going too much technical, or they are doing sort of things in which the people cannot relate the product or the technology. So if you are, let's say, pitching something or educating masses, you need to make sure that they can relate that product to their use case, about that, how they can extract the value out of it. So, okay, we don't need any technical gurus or, technical knowledge that how this will work, but, how they can utilize that product, number one. And with that, what sort of challenges they can solve. So that's the thing that we need to focus on once we are going about educating the masses and, creating the awareness.
That's really good.
Yeah, the same point here. I think that the knowledge gap is huge. And I mean, just try to bridge the gap for even the senior executives and directors, even the CEOs of these, banks or financial institutions. Okay. The first one they ask, what is blockchain? It's only Bitcoin, right? Or the second answer they gave me, no, it's not only that, then anything else. And then once I had a discussion with the director in Amex, and he watched like 50 videos about blockchain on YouTube, and he said, okay, we need to have blockchain here. I'm like, okay, wait, how did you make that decision? You can watch 50 videos about basketball on YouTube. Are you going to know exactly what to do when you're on the court? Not necessarily. So you need like strong guidance, the right training, the right consultant to be able to really guide you. Yes, do you need to have blockchain in this use case, or no, maybe you need AI, maybe you need a different technology for that specific project. So you need to understand, to have the knowledge to make that right decision on which technology stack you require for that specific project or use case.
That's really a great point. Where do you think, Fawaz, since we are on this point, where do you think academia and education institutions or even professional institutions, at what point are we with the education of the masses? Like, are they offering any modules? Are they offering a free education, or I mean, even a YouTube video can educate you on the concept, right? It cannot give you the true practice. But where do you think we are in terms of the academia and universities?
I think that, like in the past couple of years, when Dubai was hosting the Future Blockchain Summit, that really introduced the region to what blockchain is, what it can do, and what are the applications. And a lot of those startups who won those events that opened the door. And then people are now trying to see, okay, what else can I learn? How can blockchain benefit me or for my company? How can I reduce costs with blockchain? How can I apply blockchain here to improve my let's say if I'm having customer churn or my quality of service to my customers, in order for them not to leave them to my competition. So Emirates MBD was one of the first that implemented blockchain on their check systems, and that also opened the door to other banks to follow suit. So the answer is, I think the institution should do. There is definitely an opportunity for institutions to be able to really reach out to those, let's say, directors, executive level management, and train them about what those technology can do for their business or for their use cases to really gain that benefit.
Great point. Thank you. Charbel, you want to add something?
Yes, simply what was Fawaz saying, that in my opinion, most important than educating the mass and educating people, we have to start with people in power and regulators first. So I think the lack in education is in this part. So let's finish with these people, the regulators, the people in power first, and people will get the fintech or the knowledge as given, because they are using, as you mentioned, every day those smartwatches and fintech application, even without they even know that this is fintech or this is a new technology. So let's focus on educating regulators first.
That's really
You might
great.
add just a little bit to that. Yeah, Charbel, I agree with you with that. One of the things that I think is exciting about being in this part of the world is, the UAE in particular, and even now I see a lot of stuff happening in Bahrain, is that they're very forward thinking from a senior, the highest level, right? They're thinking, Fourth Industrial Revolution, they created the Fourth Industrial Revolution Department or something like this, CI4R, something like this department, or Future Foundation, all these different initiatives where they're thinking, very strategic. And, as Charbel, alluded to, one of the challenges is that I guess the regulators are not on that same wavelength. But like one of the differences between this part of the world and other parts of the world, let's say, other Western countries, they typically, startups will build a solution and then government will say, we need to regulate this. Yeah. And so, whereas in this part of the world, it's kind of the opposite almost. It's like you have to wait for regulations to be in place before you can enter into the marketplace. And I think that's one of the things that's, in my humble opinion, that's maybe slowing disruption down. And then, as I said earlier, regulation is oftentimes what stifles innovation. And so, once we can find that right balance, then I think we'll see a lot more innovation come from this part of the world. That's all.
That's really great. I totally agree with your humble opinion. Great. I would like to, for time constraints, I would like to pass on to the last question, unless someone has something to add on the knowledge side. Are we all, have we all given our opinions? Okay.
I like training. I think training is very important.
I totally agree with that, especially leadership, right?
Leadership. And Pearson has some great programs as well. Just throwing it out there.
Thank you, Damu. We do agree with that too. Thank you.
Okay, great. I'll just pass on to the last question, which is related a little bit with what is currently happening, right? We saw that COVID-19 has impacted a lot the fintech industry, and as a previous panel also mentioned, governments had to be agile, right? They had to go on a trial and error, as Hanan mentioned, mode, let's say, and they needed to be innovative to go forward. Personally, I heard a lot and I read a lot about somehow finding a way to disappear cash from existence, because cash is transmitting a lot of diseases. I mean, if you just think about how many people have touched a banknote, you would be surprised, and that's how several diseases and microbes are transferred. So I was reading very often about many governments going and researching about central bank digital currencies, or not necessarily central bank, or just payment related digital currencies, let's say. So where do you think the fintech industry is heading after COVID-19? Where do you think governments will go next? Do you think the centralization of the monetary system will disappear somehow and go towards decentralization, or it will remain central and it will just go towards a central bank digital currency? Where do you see the fintech industry going in this particular perspective?
I may start if you want.
This is a challenging one. This is almost a political question.
Let's keep it diplomatic, though. Let's keep it diplomatic.
You know, some of us teach government officials, you know.
Okay.
Let me start.
Guys, I just want your frank opinion on what's happening right now, and diplomatically positioning yourself in what do you think where this is going.
I will share with you also an experience regarding what's happening in Lebanon economically and financially. To answer your question, in order to allow new fintech services rather than payments and remittances, things like digital identity, lending, B2B fintech, not B2C fintech that we are seeing a lot, and also digital banking. We need more flexibility and cooperation from regulators again and central banks in terms of eKYC and the remote onboarding, for example. So central banks all over the world are investigating CBDC, as you mentioned, and in the region also central banks must go further in applying digital currencies. It's only a matter of 2 or 3 years that we're gonna see some stable coins and cryptocurrency and digital currencies from, for example, China. So in Lebanon, you all know the double spending problem resolved by the blockchain and Satoshi. In Lebanon, for example, you are facing currently the triple spending problem. So let me highlight it. Lebanese people has put their money in banks for sure, and central bank borrowed from commercial banks. So the central bank lent the government the money, and during like 30 years, corrupted governments spent the money. So each dollar was spent like 3 times, and on ledgers, people still have the numbers, but in banks there's no money. So I think we need like a new Satoshi to solve this problem in Lebanon. And I think central bank digital currency can save us. So this is just an opinion regarding that.
Great. Thank you, Charbel.
If I may add on top of that, I do agree that central banks should do that. They actually do release and do use digital currencies, but only between banks. So I think at the moment, we really need that, digital currency opened a little bit, or at least with some restrictions in place. But there's still a long way to go to have that option. And I think, as someone else mentioned, since we don't really have those regulations in place, or the cryptocurrency not being that stable, I think it's one of the major factors why we haven't seen that happen yet. Of course, COVID-19 is going to speed that up, I'm sure. It has to. But in the same time, there are so many things that need to be ironed out. Right now, if we're looking, we have CoinKitty. Like that's like the best example of how unstable cryptocurrency can become. So I think as soon as centralized banks, they actually can link a currency towards something, we can get the ball rolling. But until then, we're still very much stuck.
Yeah, so just to answer that, a great point by Tania and by Charbel. So stable coin is the answer to that, because that addresses the gap of the fluctuation of the cryptocurrency, because now you can actually peg it to a fiat or to USD or euro or even to gold just to maintain its value. And that's available now and can be done even technically. So example about the cryptocurrency or central bank cryptocurrency or digital currency. So example in Venezuela, they had an economic collapse and their currency collapsed and they had hyperinflation. So now recently, I think about maybe 3 weeks ago, the government announced that they're going to issue their currency on Bitcoin or one of the cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin or Ether, I forget which one. Because 2 years ago when the same problems happened, people went and bought Bitcoin just to keep their money, because otherwise if they don't, they will lose the value of the currency. And the second thing is, if you look at the US dollar today, 10 years ago, like 100,000 dirhams does not have the same purchasing power as it did 10 years ago, right? Everybody knows this. UAE, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, the same thing, because we're all pegged to the US dollar. So our purchasing power is decreasing year after year because of the peg to the US dollar. So it's not to the benefit of the public, right? Because of the central bank issues additional supply, and then the value of the currency drops down, and the Federal Reserve and everything else. So now people are thinking, okay, in Lebanon's case, the currency, the same thing, the hyperinflation because of the currency valuation. So now people went and bought Bitcoin, and even though it's created by an unknown person until today, and people went and bought into it anyway, now became one of the world's greatest storage of value. So that gives you an option now. There is an option beyond what the central banks are offering. So the central bank now has to look at, and then they saw what happened with Facebook Libra when they came out with Libra last year, and now they're thinking, okay, let's do a digital currency. But I think in order to be fair for the system, a decentralized finance is a better approach because of what we're seeing with the US dollar and the devaluation of the dollar year after year. So that should be a better approach. And of course, the 2008 financial crisis, where we all know we can no longer trust those big Wall Street banks, and the movies that prove that point. And so now there's another option. So the decentralized finance is definitely another option that can consider, and which could be more fair for the public and to maintain the value of the currency for each sovereign country. That's my opinion.
Great. Thank you, Fawaz. Thank you. We are running a little bit out of time. Does anyone want to add something regarding to the question? I see Damu making a...
Yeah. Yeah, one last. Yes, Damu. I think you can.
Go ahead. Someone else. I don't mind.
Yeah. For central bank digital currency, we still see like a lot of governments are pushing, or central banks are doing their bit, but there is not enough things. If I would be honest with you, there is not enough thing that is happening around, and even they are happening, we are not sure that whether it is a wholesale CBDC or a retail CBDC, So there is a lack of clarity about how things are going up and what sort of challenges they are having. If we can have more transparency into that system, we can be able to, or the concerned people can be able to help out the government, and they need to have a much larger reach. Not only focused about the UAE, or let's say if we are talking about Saudi Arabia, they should not be only focused about what's happening in the UAE and in Bahrain. They should reach out to other governments who are successfully implementing this. So we need much larger scope and also a much more clarity about how things are shaping up.
Right. Can I just say one comment? So my only comment is, first of all, Charbel, I agree everything you just said. I just learned something about what's happening in your country. So thank you for sharing that. The only point I want to bring out is that, of the top 100 economies in the world, only 69 of the top 100 economies in the world are corporations. So that means only 31 of the top 100 economies in the world are countries. So that leads me to just make a educated guess that I think we're going to see the emergence of more and more digital currency backed by corporations. I'll just leave it at that.
Let's hope that goes smoothly, though, from a regulation perspective and ethics perspective.
But if one of these corporations decided that, we're just going to push through, who's going to stop them?
True. Very true. Great point, Damu. Very great point. Okay, very, very good. I mean, it has been amazing. I would love to go on for hours in discussing fintech and whatever doubts that the audience must have. But I'm afraid we would need to close the panel and go to the audience on some questions that they have. Elizabeth, if I saw a lot of people writing, so if you can help me out.
Absolutely. I was copying some of the great questions and promising everyone that they will get answered. First was Jean-Luc. He's addressing Fawaz. We were speaking about tokenization, I believe. And Jean-Luc is saying the opportunity is clear, but the ownership, legal aspects, and regulations are not clear. The title deed still needs to be owned by a single entity, no? And then he's also saying, what about impact of RegTech, GDPR, and identity management? So that's the second question from him.
Okay, so a great question. So, for example, in the UAE, you have a company called Smart Crowd, which allows you to make a purchase in a token share ownership in an apartment in Dubai. And you can buy a share ownership for like 5,000 dirhams in like an apartment in Jumeirah as well, in premium areas. So the way it works technically is this: the Dubai Land Department now supports the structure where they can issue title deed ownership as fractional shares, and that's how they're doing it with smartcrowd.ae, the company which is based in the IFC, and they have a license from the IFC. So the same concept can now be applied to token share ownership for real estate assets such as hotels, hospitals, malls, whichever the case may be. Iman has a lot of assets as well that they can be posed for token share ownership, right? So the same concept can be applied. So the technology is there, the legal aspect is also there. It's just a matter of making it further for other entities as well.
Thank you. And what about the second question? What about the impact of RegTech, GDPR, and identity management? That's the question from Jean-Luc to all of you.
Okay, shall I go or somebody else wants to answer this?
Raj, you're on the roll, man.
So, okay, so GDPR and RegTech. So if you imagine this, right? If you imagine that when you, like for example, there's a company in New York, it's called Fluidity, and they're doing a token share ownership for apartment complexes in New York City, and they're using Ethereum, and they're creating the marketplace where that any person would be able to make a purchase of a token share of that apartment. Let's say it's a penthouse and it's being rented out for, let's say $100,000 a month. The person who owns a 10% stake token share would receive that rental value in his bank account on a monthly basis. Let's say, for example, I make a purchase of that 10% stake. I go into the marketplace on the app online, and I go and make that purchase. But my identity is actually sent to the legal registration of the Land Department in New York, which understand that me, Fawaz, is the ownership token share of a title deed worth of 10% token share in that apartment, in that penthouse. And that's how they're doing it. So in the Smart Crowd example in Dubai, the same thing is happening, because now it's only available for UAE residents, and by I think end of this year they're going to make it available for the GCC residents. So when you make a purchase with the Smart Crowd, your identity is linked to that specific asset for that title deed. In terms of GDPR, I'm not sure honestly what they're doing to hide your identity, but your ID must be able to be linked to that title deed for them to confirm and ensure that you are the owner of that percent or that token share percentage of that apartment in Jumeirah. because 1 year later, if that apartment appreciates in value by 15%, 20%, and it gets sold, you as the owner of that 10% will now increase equally in that value, and you'll be making a profit, and you receive that amount in your account as part of that ownership, token share ownership.
Just to add to that, in Smart Crowd is not a blockchain-based solution. It is not at this point. So just want to put that out there. I know that there's something called Rubin Coin, which is based in Japan. There was another project that I'm aware of that was in New York that was similar. But so that's how I met Omar with Smart Crowd and learned that it's not a blockchain solution today. I think the future will be.
Great. Thank you, Damu, for that. Next question.
Yes, so we have Akram who is asking, how can poor countries go with this? Any hope for them to join the wave? Where can they or should they start? Any suggestions?
Actually, I think, oh, sorry, go for it, Loredana.
I just wanted to clarify if Akram can actually clarify like which part of the discussion was the question made, so we connected to which question.
I think it was during the time we were discussing the technologies, the blockchain, and in general, the other technologies that were powering fintech. Akram, if you can confirm, please, that would be great.
Okay. Maybe he meant how can poor countries go with implementing fintech, right? I don't think he's in the plan. So how can poor countries go with implementing fintech, and what are the challenges?
Can I take this one? I'm just gonna be very brief because I know time is of the essence right now. But I think with poor countries, they actually have the benefit of implementing something from scratch and kind of skipping that more of a corrupted liquidity stage. If we look at other sectors, for example, the internet, when it came to less developed markets, it's actually way better because the old infrastructure wasn't there. So right now the speed of the internet is crazy, right? So I think when it comes to fintech or anything of a bigger innovation in technology sector to underdeveloped country, it's actually an opportunity because you get to implement something current out of the bat. In the same time, I know that people and the government and all the systems might take a while to digest and understand and get used to it. So for example, if we relate now to COVID-19, when it comes to payments in emerging markets where cash was king again, now we see people that are preferring the online method or contactless method. So while digital payments and newer technologies in emerging markets take a while to get there out of necessities or get implemented out of necessities, then they stay and persist because of the convenience. And it's also a secure way. So it's kind of like skipping that, that stage where it can benefit corruption, if it makes sense.
Leapfrogging the old technology and passing directly. Very good point, Tania, very good point. I have a quick, very bold question. Yes, Taha, please.
I just want to add over here something. The poor countries, they are actually been using the fintech from a long time. If I may add, there is one solution which is M-Pesa, if you remember. So there is already such solutions in place that is been coming up, and if it's not about actually poor country, it's about education and awareness. If you are poor and if you are staying poor, it's up to you. You can, if you are poor and if you can, learn some new technologies, new skills, you can enhance yourself and, come up with some good solution. So it's not about, it's about, cashing in the opportunity and know the right skill and then acting with the masses. Because if let's say, if you can put up a case, everybody will be here to help you out, So it's about, reaching the masses and gain the right skills.
That's a great point, Taha. It was actually related to my quick, bold question about can fintech save the unbanked? And actually, the example that you mentioned, the M-Pesa in Kenya, managed to somehow leapfrog the fintech side, and the telecommunications industry served as a catalyst, right? Just by using SMS, let's say remittances in Kenya, people could just use a simple phone to do this. So a very, very good point. Anyone else wants to add something really quick? All good.
I think
Okay.
I think we had a last question from Mohammed, who's asking to all, salam to all, how will fintech apply to the concepts of Islamic banking?
I think, Mohammed, if that's okay with you, on our fourth panel, we have Fiona Kirubi. She's an Islamic finance expert. She will answer your question with examples, with everything. So I think we can close this panel and we will take this question and ask it on the fourth panel. Thank you so much to all the panelists. Your insights have been really great. I even learned some new stuff. So thank you for that. Always expanding knowledge. And I hope the audience managed to learn something new also in terms of fintech and its impact. I think we can grab a 3-minute, 4-minute quick break, right? To grab some water and tea. And we will continue with our third panel, the true potential of AI. Thank you so much, everyone.